Hello there, and welcome to Stow with Sean. I'm Sean Reimer, I don't rhyme, and today we are going to be talking about DEWSCI and its relevance in Star Trek Online. So for those who don't know what DUAI is, it stands for Directed Energy Weapon Science. And to further explain that, we need to talk about different metas in the game. Now, there's ones that are very specific and optimized. You have pure Directed Energy Weapon, you have pure Torp, you got pure EPG, you got some Hangar Pet Shenanigans in there, some tanking. But in Star Trek Online, you can also hybridize some of these different metas. So you have things like Torp, or you have tanking with some beam stuff going on. In this case, we have science mixed with directed energy weapon shenanigans. I keep saying shenanigans. I like that word. Now, the reason I got into DUAI is because I started off my main character as a science character, and I got very heavily into the science meta, especially Torp, and very much so all science, with a ship like the Verne Temporal Science Vessel. Growing up with Star Trek, I really wanted to get into the directed energy weapon side of it, while not necessarily abandoning what I had learned with the science stuff. For a while, DUAI was not very supported in Star Trek Online, and it comes down to, especially on console, because console you can't individually tune power levels like you can on PC. It comes down to power levels. So you try and put more of your power into boosting your weapons, your exotic abilities are going to suffer, and vice versa. So it became more of a compromise as opposed to really helping both succeed. But I feel like DUAI has gotten a lot better over time, and some more support that's gone under the radar. So I'm going to show you guys a build that I've been working on, which is my favorite build in the game, that really excels in combining these two metas together. We are going to be using the Terran Hydra Intel Destroyer. The great thing with DUAI is you don't necessarily need a science ship as long as you're able to slot in the right things. A lot of science involves using the right universal consoles and unconventional systems to speed those along. And I think we have a pretty good ship to do it here. So I've put the Hestia skin on here. The skin's not really that important. Just know that it is the Terran Hydra Intel Destroyer. This is in the C-Store for around 3,000 Zen. It was part of the, the 12th anniversary bundle, so, and you can get it separately. Zen is currently on sale on PlayStation, by the way, so that would be a good time to check it out. It won't cost too much, at least the ship. The gear, on the other hand, it will cost a pretty penny. I'm thinking of doing some budget builds in the future. Let me know if you guys are interested, but here is the spared no expense Jurassic Park Plasma DUAI build. So the core component of this build is going to be a trait called complex plasma fires. Each shot coming from your plasma weapons will do a stacking damage over time effect. And if you get enough stacks of this can get quite extreme. This is also boosted by your weapon power, which you're probably wondering, Sean, why wouldn't you just put on a bunch of ISO mags on here? Put in like 5, for example, because you have 3 engineering consoles and 2 universal ones. Well, you could do that for absolute pure directed energy weapon, but I want to see how this worked for throwing in some science as well. The great thing about ISO mags is that they help stack your weapon power and give you more weapon power in general, which means you can have your subsystem powers set to auxiliary and not really sacrifice a whole lot. I still see my weapon power hitting 140, which for a build like this is pretty good. Obviously, it's not going to be anywhere near something like a Legendary Avenger or one of those ships that has a ton of isomag capacity and is focusing purely on directed energy weapon. But that's where the science comes in for this one. We have some very nice psi support. which is going to work really well with this trait. So let's go through everything on the build here. So obviously we're using plasma weapons. You don't really have to be too picky on which ones to use. I like using the Viridians because I like the look of them. They're red as opposed to green, which for a Federation ship I kind of like. I get to have the look of phaser a little bit while having my plasma shenanigans in there. I need to stop saying that. Take a shot every time I say shenanigans. So I'm using the Viridian Plasma Dual Heavy and a Wide Arc Viridian Plasma Dual Heavy, along with a Viridian Plasma turret in the back. Along with complex plasma fires, this comes from the Gorn Heavy Raider, which is in the Infinity lockbox, by the way. You can get it on the exchange. It costs a lot on the exchange. I risked it with the lockbox. Either way, it's not ideal, but next year you'd be able to get this as your event campaign reward. So keep that in mind. So along with complex plasma fires, you're also going to get some goodies. First is the Plasma Incendiary Bombard. I was going to say bombardment, but no, just bombard. So what this will do is it'll deal a flat plasma damage to its target within a 90-degree arc, so make sure you're facing the right way. This is a cannon scatter volley build, so you're going to be facing forward anyway. So it's going to be dealing that plasma damage, along with all 3 more of these lines of damage, depending on how big the ship is. So if you're facing a Dreadnought, it's going to deal the 23, it's going to deal the next 3 lines of damage as well to that Dreadnought. So this is insanely powerful for those really tough big ships that live long enough to be able to deal this kind of damage in elite content. And also, this is going to be adding to that complex plasma fire dot that's going to be generated. So this deals a lot of damage, this experimental weapon. Which is why I recommend, if you're choosing something like this type of build, try and get something with an experimental weapon. You're kind of missing out if you don't have something with an experimental weapon. A very important part of this build as well is a console called Lure Team Command. The clicky for it, it's a little bit useful. It takes a lot of time to get going. It's good during an ISE. If you hit this button around the 25-second mark, because then it'll actually drop the enemy shields by the time you get there. The clicky's okay. What you really want this for is the 30% dot damage buff, which is Cat 1, and then 20% bonus plasma damage. That's Cat 2. So that's quite a bit going for you with that. So that's dot damage. And then another thing that helps improve that dot damage and plasma damage with the plasma fires is the Fury Torment engine. So not only is this console really good for your plasma builds, it's really good for your science builds too, because this will help with radiation and fire and physical damage. And then an optional piece that comes with the Gorn Raider, that comes with complex plasma fires and the experimental weapon Lure Team Command, is also the Gorn Plasma quad cannons. These aren't too special. 5% chance, minus 30 dot damage resistance rating for 30 seconds. That can be useful. It's a higher proc chance than something like the Viridians, although I have more Viridians on here. So if you want to put another Viridian weapon or whatever plasma flavor you want on there, you can. On the flip side of that argument, you are getting some plasma quad cannons, which will help lower the cost a bit when it comes to making the build. So pick your poison. I've also put on the advanced piezoplasma dual cannons because I really like the beam array when it comes to PvP and the technical overload effect that's applied to it. This also comes with protomatter regeneration or regenerative influx, which helps with your survivability a bit. And that proc is also a 5% chance. So these are some pretty good cannons. For the other turret that I didn't mention, this is the Biomatter Auto Turret. You can find this in the Lobby store. What this will do is it'll fire an additional shot at a random target within 5 kilometers. So this is good for getting that extra complex plasma fire hit on the target, because this will automatically deal an extra shot. And then to wrap up the weapons, because this is DUAI, I wanted to find a torpedo, because first off, I like torpedoes. A torpedo that really helps with the science. And for a plasma build with some science stuff, I can think of no better torpedo than the particle emission plasma. So this will deal a very, very potent plasma cloud around your targets. Complex plasma fires does not scale off of EPG. If it did, I would not be using any other build ever, but it's probably fair that it doesn't. Still, there's that EPG element, and particle emission plasma is one of the OG EPG torpedoes, and it fits perfectly on this build. I would recommend trying to find one, or craft one if you can. Find one on the exchange that has the spread mod on it, because this will give you a free torque spread. For devices, nothing too fancy. Red matter capacitor to help with my power levels a bit. I should probably be using something else. I just can't think of anything really. You could be using a reactive armor catalyst for some survivability. You could be using deuterium surplus for some speed. The flagship distress frequency transponder if you want to have a flagship fleet with you. It's pretty cool. And then Kobayashi Maru transponder for some of the buffs that it gives. And then 3 advanced batteries, energy amplifier, exotic particle flood, and kinetic amplifier. In particular, I really like the new exotic particle flood advanced battery, because this will help with aux power. The shield deflector impulse warp stuff. I know there's a Tholian warp core that was in one of the events that drops crystals and does a lot of damage and whatnot. I don't have it, but honestly, I'm not really craving it a whole lot. I'm currently running the 2-piece revolutionary set. This is without a doubt the best EPG set to run in the game. It's in the Mud store. You can get it discounted for 3,000 Zen. I would highly recommend it, because this will deal 53.7 exotic particle crit severity with the 2-piece. And then it helps with direct energy weapon damage based on aux power a bit as well. Deflector, I'm running the Intervention Protomatter Deflector, the Colony Deflector as a lot of people call it, for the crit severity and crit chance. And then the competitive impulse engines, the innervated ones. I've tried to use the bolstered ones, because technically I do have more controls. This would proc a little bit more, but for some reason I prefer hitting my tack abilities to get that speed boost as opposed to my science abilities, where for my science abilities, I'm mostly in the same spot when I'm hitting them, as opposed to the tactical abilities where I'm trying to maneuver a little bit quicker. So I do have bioneural infusion circuits for the crit severity. I have 2 isomags. For DUAI, I wouldn't run more than 2. I think 2 is a good number. I have 1 for the plasma energy damage, and I have 1 for EPG, because I think getting a little bit of EPG is good too. That's what I like about these consoles. You can re-engineer them to get quite a few different buffs. Like, you can even set one for aux power if you want to. What I don't like is that re-engineering them is a pain in the ass. It's like I'm in Vegas with all the gambling I have to do with my dilithium. For DUAI, I'd recommend having your EPG above 270. I have mine at about 312, but you can get away with 270. Exotic particle field exciter. This is the really expensive one off the exchange, but this gives you almost 80 EPG, so I'd say it's worth it. DPRM, it's my oh shit button.
I'm a shit.
Oh, you're a shit, Jeremy. You are the shit on my shoe.
I'm a total shit.
A giant, walking, talking, anthropomorphized shit on stilts. A shit for all seasons. The shit man of Europe.
What a total shit.
And it'll also deal bonus damage while your hull is above 80%. Help with the regen and whatnot. I have Sensor Phantom Projector. So if you're flanking the enemy, this will deal 25.6 bonus directed energy weapon damage when it's not active, or when you click on it, it goes all the way up to pretty much 154% bonus directed energy weapon damage. This is insane. if you have a ship that doesn't have radar flanking, as long as you have like an intel primary specialization, and I'm also running temporal secondary, but intel primary, get your flanking damage, and then add this. It's fantastic. And then 8% crit severity, because why not? I'm running Genesis Seed for the massive amount of radiation damage, and this is also helped by the Fury Torment. Plasma Storm for EPG, and also the control of that plasma tornado. It scales off of EPG. It's also boosted by my plasma effects, so it's a no-brainer. Lorca's custom fire controls for the crit chance, shield pen, weapon power setting. I don't have the two-piece on here. For the torpedo, if you don't have the particle emission plasma, a very good secondary option would be dark matter, because then you get the two-piece, which helps with crit chance and crit severity, and then this is also damage over time. So, something to consider for you guys. Delphic Tear for the bonus exotic damage and crit severity. It's also got a really nice cone radiation attack, which pairs very, very nicely with the Dragon's Blood Flame Reactor. I cannot believe I did not get the ship that this came from, because this is an insane console. Especially if you're doing a 5 Magics Disruptor build, which I have another one of those. If you want to see it, let me know. But even without the 5 Magics, having Delphic Tear and Dragon's Blood as your kind of cone attacks, it's a 1-2 punch. It is fantastic. Dragon's Blood also gives some bonus damage for fire, cold, electrical, radiation, and psionic. There's not really any psionic I can think of on this build, but radiation, of course, with Genesis Seed and Delphic Tear. And then I could put on some electrical if I wanted. I could put on Spore Infused Anomalies, a good console for increasing electrical. Would be another good one. Cascading Subatomic Disruptions. This is also very good for electrical damage and EPG Aux Power. Cascading Subatomic came off of the Mirror Earhart, I think it's called. And then this came off of the Connie 3, the Enterprise G, bioelectrical wave capacitor. It doesn't show here, but this actually deals 40% bonus electrical damage, which is phenomenal for a Spore Infused build. If we go to skills, specializations, like I mentioned, Intel primary and temporal secondary. We're going to traits, personal space traits, unconventional systems. I have, how many uncon procs do I have on here? 4, 5, 6. I have 6 uncon procs on here, so this is great for getting the universal consoles up and running. I have regenerative control synergy. Whenever you're activating one of those controls, those 6 controls, you get some hull regen, helps for staying alive. Staying alive, staying alive. Terran targeting systems for the 15% crit severity. Inspirational leader for the boost to Starship skills. Abundance of caution. Whenever your targets are confused, you get a damage resistance rating increase. Scramble sensors is one of them. And then attack pattern Lambda. I think that's how you pronounce that. I was going to call it Lambada. That sounds more fun. Might be my Constar showing, so my apologies. It's a 20% chance to confuse and placate, so that helps with abundance of caution. Particle Manipulator. This is an absolute must if you're doing anything EPG. You can craft this from your R&D. 50% crit hit chance for exotic damage, and then 31.2% crit hit severity for exotic damage abilities. So, as I said, my EPG is at 312. That's how you can tell. Fresh from R&R. So this is more of a me thing. I do a lot of solo content, so I am rocking Exodus on here, and 2 copies of Intel Team. This is great for staying alive and stealth.
Staying alive, staying alive.
It's also not bad for PvP in my experience, so... that's personally me, though. If you find yourself playing with a lot of your friends and whatnot, doing elite content together, and if you have a tank, if you have some other kind of healing, you don't really need this. This is just for me doing my solo stuff, because I have no friends. I am pathetic.
I walk a lonely road.
Boimler effect for the bridge officer cooldowns. Fragment of AI tech for energy weapon damage and control expertise. And then adaptive offense for crit chance and crit severity. Since I'm not running the Lorca 2 piece, I want to try and get a little bit more out of that. Emergency weapon cycle, kicking off the Starship traits. For the weapon power cost reduction and the firing cycle haste whenever you activate a attack pattern ability. I originally had attack pattern beta on here. I decided to swap that out for Ionic Turbulence 2 and then put one of the pilot abilities on there. I really like the pilot rework. I didn't think I would, but it's not too bad. I've talked about complex plasma fires. It's lovely. Withering Barrage, I am using Cannon Scatter Volley as, without a doubt, is the most powerful firing mode for directed energy weapons in the game. Plus, I really like that it can target 3 targets at once. The only other firing mode that can do that is Fire at Will, and we know what the deal is with Fire at Will.
It's shit.
Cryptic, or whoever you're being run by now because of all your restructurings, please buff Fire at Will. We miss Fire at Will.
Come back! Come back!
Plus, Scatter Volley's really good since you're using a gravity well to get all your targets into one place along with your Plasma Storm, Genesis Seed, all your controls. And then you can just attack multiple enemies at once. It is insanely powerful. But Withering Barrage, this will extend the duration of Scatter Volley. We talked about Exodus for the stealth, control, bonus weapon damage. This also works with Jam Sensors, so I have Jam Sensors on there as an uncon proc as well. So, Terran Machinations, this is one of the Starship traits that is like purely designed for DUAI, one of the very, very few. So whenever you activate an attack pattern bridge officer ability, 30% exotic damage, and whenever you activate a control, 10% firing cycle haste. So you got your yin, you got your yang, you got everything in between. I don't know if there is anything in between, but
No.
Universal Designs. So this is good for crit chance and crit severity, stacks up to 5 times whenever you activate a universal console. If you really want to get this going, if you really want to utilize it the most that you possibly can, I'd recommend a phaser build. Put Immolating Phaser Lance, because then you can hit that every 5 seconds, and put Cutting Tractor Beam, because it'll add bonus damage for your universal consoles. For me, with the Plasma build, I wanted to stick to purely Plasma, and Cutting Tractor Beam itself doesn't deal a lot of damage. It's more the passives for it. Ruin of our enemies, this is fantastic for science. Anytime you're killing a lot of enemies at the same time within a short amount of time. 3% bonus all damage, and this stacks 99 times. That's a lot of damage. On your 5th defeat, minus 15% recharge time for bridge officer abilities. For Space Rep, Precision for the crit chance, Advanced Targeting Systems for the crit severity, Particle Generator Amplifier for the bonus exotic damage. I put Energy Refrequencer on here, so I'll get 9.4% of my outgoing damage as a hull heal. So this helps keep me alive a bit. You can also go with something like Magnified Firepower, although I do have controlled countermeasures on here, which is better for DUAI because you'll be controlling enemies. It's a bigger bonus. But if you want another bonus for your energy weapons, you can put Magnified Firepower. Another one I like, Aux Power Configuration Offense. But personally, with me kind of balancing the weapon side of my subsystem with my Aux Power, I decided I wanted to go with something a little more survivable. If you're rocking a bigger ship, I would also highly recommend Tyler's Duality, because that'll give you some more crit chance. Space Rep, in terms of active, I need to get another slot here. I don't use these too much, but I use the important ones. Quantum Singularity and Manipulation's an important one, because this will give 125 to your science stats. Anti-Time Entanglement, this is the big rainbow orb. Deals quite a bit of damage. It's very nice. Refracting Tetryon Cascade is also very nice for the Tetryon damage. It's one of the few uses of Tetryon. Cryptic! Buff catch read only. Deploy sensor interference platform. This is great for giving a little distraction to the other enemies, keep you alive a little bit. If you want to see the skill tree, I haven't really touched it in a few years. I have some engineering stuff to keep me alive. Obviously the tax stuff when it comes to application and whatnot. I've maxed out control expertise and drain. You don't really need to do anything with shields because shields don't matter. Hull plating, I put a little bit in there. Amplification, like I said. Exotic particle generator, max that out. You don't really need long-range targeting sensors. Increased hull pen and shield pen. Subsystem performance as well. Scientific readiness. That sort of thing. So this is not quite TAC Ultimate. It's TAC almost Ultimate. Enough to get Focused Frenzy. That's the most important thing. And Frenzied Assault. For my Bridge Officer abilities, here are my controls on this. Tractor Beam, Scramble Sensors, Gravity Well. Gravity Well will be the main control to sort of group the enemies together so I can annihilate them. Another control I have on here is Ionic Turbulence. This is really good with the Intel rework, so I'd highly recommend it. And then Jam Targeting Sensors. I am also obviously running Cannon Scatter Volley and 2 copies of Intel Team to go with Exodus. Keep me alive. Very Cold in Space is nice, considering the cold damage is being improved by the Dragon's Blood Flame Reactor. I'm running Torp Spread 1, because that's all I have room for, really. And then for Engineering, Emergency Powered Weapons 1. You could also, if you wanted another control, you could put Emit Unstable Warp Bubble. I'm personally running Clean Getaway, because Clean Getaway has a pretty short recharge time. And I also want to put as many pilot abilities as I could on here. It's an uncon proc as well. So, and then Attack Pattern Lambda, because this will give a chance to confuse. It'll also help with accuracy, perception, and it'll debuff not just AI targets, but also players. If you're doing PvP, this is also pretty good. If you want to do some survival, I'd recommend Hold Together. This is very good. I also have a duty officer that goes together with that, if I can find it. Yeah. So 40% chance to improve targeting and combat maneuvers when using Hold Together or Flyer Apart. My duty officers on this build, I have a gravimetric scientist for creating additional gravity wells, a security officer 32 of 47 for crit severity and exotic damage whenever I'm activating science or intel abilities. I have 47 of 47 for activating those same abilities. It'll reduce the cooldown. 27 of 47, same thing as 32, except it's using TAC for increased crit severity. I have a biochemist for reducing my threat to keep me alive a little longer. And I have 31 of 47. The temp isn't doing anything on this build. If you're using a temp op ship, you'll get more out of this. I recommend the mirror angle strike wing escort. You'll be able to do everything, except it'll be with temp abilities, which is arguably better for science. I just really like the Hydra. But this will improve my damage over time when activating science abilities. And I think that is pretty much the build. It's my first time I've properly recorded one of these that isn't on a stream. This has been fun. If you want to look at my stats, this is the most I can provide on console. I know PC, they can show more stats, so that's what we're looking at. Here's some footage of this build in combat. I did a solo Starbase 324 on Elite as well as Wanted. And I believe another one of the clips is a Japori or a Gamma. It's one of those. I do have the DPS figures approximated, because for console you can't really... It's tricky to parse. But there is an app that you can download. You can download it off the web. You can even go on the web and just use it. It's the Console Parsing Assistant. It'll give you a list of patrols that you want to do solo, and it'll calculate the DPS for you. There's also some equations you can do. That's how I did it back in the day. But here are the numbers that I got, which are the best that I've done. It's also the quickest that I've killed Starbase 234. I've never killed that so fast. This build is amazing. I really like it. Is it the strongest thing in the game? I don't really know. But I feel for me, it's my favorite build because it combines everything that I've learned about science and it puts it into a package where I still get to go pew pew pew, you know? There's something so satisfying about it. I hope you guys found this useful. Let me know if there's any other builds you want me to cover. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Stowe with Sean. I'm Sean Reimer. I don't rhyme. Live long and prosper.